All right, so we're recording. So this is again to kick us off with doing some initial calculations for the Certificate of Need project. So the focus for today, just want to briefly go through again what you're all going to have to do for the final course project, and then really we're going to focus on getting into that data file and getting your pivot tables set up so you can start some of the analysis. And I'm also going to walk through two of the tabs on the project template, which is basically the series of calculations that you'll have to do in order to get to that final bed need. So first things first, again, for the project, New York State, we still have Certificate of Need. It's not going away anytime soon. But aside from the regulations and requirements from the state, again, it's just a good thing to do because you're basically doing a needs assessment, diving into the data, trying to figure out who's using your services and, strategically where you should be going in the future. So there are three main documents that everybody's going to need to submit for the final course project. Two of them are, there's a new discussion post. So on the discussion link, the final discussion thread is going to show you basically where to submit. One is a needs assessment, and it's the same. There's a PDF document that the state requires. And basically, I want you to answer a few of their questions. It's going to take you through a lot of the data that you're going to be, the analysis portion that you're going to be doing in the project template. So it shouldn't be anything that is going to require a lot of additional research. You should have everything that you need. The second is in that discussion post, I want everybody to do a 15-minute presentation going through the data. I've uploaded an example for y'all to watch from last semester so you can see what that looks like. And then finally, there's a separate submission space for your project template. That is, again, all of your data, all of your analysis, so I can make sure that all of your calculations look good. So if you have any questions on where to find any of that stuff, just let me know. Okay, so second thing I want to do, I'm going to hop over and I'm going to show my screen for you here so you can see what I'm looking at. So, hold on. If I can pull this up. Okay. So as everybody see in my background, I've got Blackboard up here. So basically where you want to go to get to this content for the final course project is you're going to go down to this course project folder, and basically everything that you need for the project is going to be here in this project details and documents, except for the data file, which everybody should have now based on our one-on-one conversations. So again, this is the community need assessment, and this is exactly what the Department of Health requires you to submit in addition to all of your data analysis. What we're going to be walking through today is the final project template 2016 with formulas. So I'll show you a little bit more about that. But then there's some other interesting links that are going to be useful and required for you to do your analysis. The first one is the PAD projections from Cornell. That's where you're going to get all of your population numbers. So the Cornell program, they're probably one of the most reputable population projection authorities. So not only do they have historic information, and you can break down New York State by county, but you can also look really far out into the future, and typically they're very accurate. So we're going to walk through some of that today as well. On the very bottom here, we've got Sparks data variables. So this is everything that you're going to see in that raw data file that I sent you for your county. So all of these should correspond to those column headers. And then in here, I've got some links, and these will kick out to the Sparks, the New York State Department of Health website with keys in terms of how do you break down what some of those values mean in those columns. All right, so that's where you can go for all of the details in the documents. So first things first, we're going to go through now the project template. All right, so everybody see, you guys see the project template file that I've got up here? So when you open this, so again, this is 2016, and what I've done, so in the past, I didn't have any of the calculations, and I tried to get everybody to figure out the calculations on their own. That can be a little bit overwhelming, especially since there's a lot of data analysis. So in this file, I've included the calculations. So a lot of those formulas are embedded into this template, hopefully to make your life a little bit easier. The first tab, so there's going to be 8 tabs along the bottom here. And this is basically, again, this is the progression of the analysis. So this first tab, primary service area, a little bit counterintuitive. We're not going to start here. So you've got obviously some of your basic information, right? So I know who you are, your hospital's name, the county in which you're doing your analysis, and the specific service line you're looking at. And then there's a primary service area analysis. We're actually not going to get to that for another couple of weeks. So don't worry about starting with that now. You can come back to this section later to understand market share within your county. Where we're going to start is the population tab. So again, the way the certificate of need process works and the analysis that we do is we're basically looking at a 5-year differential. So we're taking data, in this case from 2016 is the most recent year that we have, and we're going to do a projection for bed need 5 years out, so 2021. So what we want to do first and foremost is we want to go through and do, for our county that we're investigating, we want to look at the population by age and sex. So again, we're going to go to the Cornell PAD projections for that. So I'm just going to click on this link, which is going to take us there. And for purposes of me walking through this today, I'm going to pick Oswego County. So what we would do up here is I would just click on the county, go to Oswego. All right, and then it's gonna give me my population totals. So here I can select the age range. So in this case, let's do 0 to 4, and we'll do male. Okay, and then if I'm looking at 2016, I can put my cursor right on that notch, and that's going to tell me in Oswego County in 2016 what the 0 to 4 male population was for that year, right? So it's 3,365. So all I would do is go back in here. If I'm looking at males, that's going to be 3,365, right? And you're just going to continue to work through this table, looking at the population for your county. And then we also want to look at the projections for 2021, as we want to try to make, our plan for our bed need based on what the population trends are looking like. So if we want to go out, we can do for that same, keep everything the same and just look out a few years. So if we're looking at 2021, 3,236. So you just go back up here, 2,336, right? So you're going to continue to go through there and do those calculations. And then it's going to calculate too the percent difference between, actually, is that right? No, that's 3,236. I was going to say that's a big difference. 3,236. All right, so 3% change, right? So we're seeing a decrease there. And what's going to be interesting is that as you look at your county, what I will almost guarantee you're going to see is you might see some slight decreases between these years for some of the younger age cohorts. It's probably going to be pretty stagnant, as you get to the 20 to 44 and 45 to 64-year-old cohorts. But then again, when we look at these 64 to 74, 65 to 74 and 75 and up, you're going to see some major increases in those populations between just those 5 years. So from 2016 to 2021, in most counties in New York State, we're going to, and across the nation, we're going to see big spikes there. Again, us as administrators, we need to be figuring out how many beds we need to accommodate those rises. And that's, again, what we're going to go through here in the Certificate of Need. Any questions from those of you that are on the call just in terms of how to go through and calculate this information? Y'all good? Okay. Because the way this template is set up too is because we're going to look at a lot of use rates, some of the calculations we're going to do later on is actually going to come back and it's going to reference the population in 2021 or 2016. So you got to make sure that all of this is accurate in here, not only so we can see what's happening with these different age cohorts, but because it's going to be referencing some of those cells later on. So the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to go to county utilization. And to keep everybody on track with getting through this project on time, I would suggest that you try to get through the population and the county utilization tabs probably in the next couple of weeks. If you can do that, if you can have this county utilization tab wrapped up by probably April 8th, you're going to be in a great position because I think there's more of a learning curve up front with just getting set up with a pivot table and getting through some of this. So county utilization. So here we're going to be looking at for all of the, again, I'm looking at Oswego County. So we want to see for all of the residents of Oswego County, what do discharges look like by these different service categories? So medical, surgical, pediatrics, obstetrics, and psych, by these different age cohorts and by sex. Again, we're going to look at this really specifically in terms of what does the data tell us, what happened in terms of discharges. This is going to be discharges, and down here we've got patient days. Right, so for those people who were admitted to the hospital, Oswego County residents in 2016, how many were admitted and how long did they stay? Right, so this is some of the core information that's going to tell us about utilization of Oswego County residents. So we're going to walk through these two tables right now. In order to do that, I've got to go back to my raw data file. All right, so everybody should have this now based on our conversation. I shared this to you, and you can just download it from that Google link that I sent. So again, these are all of the variables that correspond to that information that I showed you in Blackboard, those variable names, right? So sex, this is ethnicity. Newborn, this is going to be a 0 or 1. It's going to show a 1 if they were born within 2016. HSA, it is health service area. You don't have to be, we're not going to use this, but New York State basically breaks out into different service areas beyond county level. This is service category. So these values correspond to med surg, pediatrics, obstetrics, and psych. Race, this is patient state. So you're going to see mostly New York State, but for some of you, depending on where your counties lie, you're going to see patients coming in from other states to receive care in your county. This is patient county. So we've got codes, again, the county code, and there are links to the keys in Blackboard, but each county has a number value. So Oswego County is county number 35, right? So we're going to see most of the patients in this data set are going to be from Oswego County, but we're also going to see that people are coming in from other counties on occasion to receive care in Oswego County. So they'll show up here as well. This is admission hour, discharge hour, disposition, so where did they go after they were discharged from the hospital, reimbursement type, so what type of payer do they have for insurance coverage, if any at all, hospital county. So this is really interesting with Oswego County, and we're going to see this. So if you look at this first line, each line represents a different patient, right? So we've got a male here who came in. One is a medical admission, and he's from Oswego, but he actually, the hospital in which he received care was county 14. And I don't know offhand, I don't remember which county that was, but we're going to see that we have a lot of Oswego County residents that are going out and receiving care elsewhere. So we're going to try to pick up on some of that migration or that spillover or leakage. His age, we've got the day he was admitted, day he was discharged. He was only in the hospital for 1 day. This represents the length of stay. We've got a zip. PFI is a permanent facility indicator. That is the digit associated with each hospital. Actually, and so, okay, so hospital county 14 is Erie County. So the facility that he went to is Buffalo General. So you're going to have all of this information, and each row in this file represents an admission that took place either within Oswego County or an Oswego County resident over the course of 2016. So the big piece here is now, how do we format this table so that we can extract the information that we need? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to format this table as a table. So if we go up here, format as table, you can click on, color palette doesn't really matter. It just makes working with pivot tables a little bit easier. So that's your first step, format the data as a table. Now this is really key too for working on patient days. One of the things that we have to do with this data table before we can do anything else is we have to convert this length of stay column into a numerical category. So right now these are all exported as text, and we need to make them numerical. And unfortunately, some of the methods for trying to change these to a digit that typically work in Excel, for some reason has been giving us trouble. So the way we can get around it is if we make a new column header, length of stay number. Okay, we're going to make a new column here, and I'm just going to do if we do a simple calculation, it'll translate it to a number. So I'm going to do equal sign. Actually, before I do that, I'm gonna highlight all of them. So if I click on this first cell and I do control space, it'll highlight this entire column. And then if I go back up to the top of this spreadsheet, and then I go in my new, whoops, control space. Hold on, guys. Go back up to the top. Gonna do equal, let's see, we can do this. Length of stay plus 0. And that's gonna translate that entire column, that new column that we just added. It's gonna take that same length of stay information, but it's just gonna make it a digit. All right, so that is basically all you have to do, format as a table and add that new column so that we can have length of stay as a numerical format. And then we're gonna go up and we are going to insert the pivot table. So go to insert and we're gonna go to pivot table. And it's, since we formatted as a table, it's gonna say you want table 1 as a pivot table, and we're gonna say okay. So now we've got our pivot table set up, and basically it takes all of those variable headers that we had and puts them over here on the right-hand side. This is our field management area, so this is where we can add filters, columns, rows, and it helps us figure out how we want to structure the data to get what we need. So if we flip back really quickly to our other file, our project template. So again, the first thing that we want is we want to know, only for Oswego County residents, we want to know how many discharges there were by these different categories, right? So we're going to start with med-surg. We want to know by age, and we want to know by sex. So to set up the pivot table to help us get that information, let's go ahead and we're going to put a couple filters on here. So the first one that we're going to do is patient county. So you just click on this, and we're going to actually drag it down here. Oops, let me move this over a bit so you can see it. So patient county. So I'm going to go up again. Oswego is 35. So we're going to click on 35. This is only going to be giving us information on Oswego County residents. We also want to know, we want to be able to differentiate by male and female. So I'm going to go here and add another filter for sex. And then let's do service category so that we can pull out med, surg, psych, obstetrics, all of those different service categories. And I'm going to take these values back up here. We don't need those down there. And then no new columns. Let me think, rows. We are going to do age. And you could set this up a lot of different ways. So I know probably for this one, everybody's going to set it up the same way that I have it. But you can skin this cat in many different ways. It all just depends. I would just play around with your pivot tables to see what makes the most sense to you. And so now in this case, again, sometimes it'll throw these summation values down here. I'm going to put that back. For now, I'm going to take our new length of stay numeric and I'm going to throw that down there. All right, and so you can change this. Right now, I'm going to do, instead of summing length of stay on these different variables, I'm going to do count, because we're looking at discharges. So all we want to do is we want to count the number of rows. So right now we've got all Oswego County residents. And let's start with males. They come up first in our list. And then service category. So we want to look at med-surg first. So med-surg is going to be service categories 1 and 2. So if we look at this, we can see for med-surg males and Oswego County residents, there were, for those that are 15 years old, there were 16 discharges. And so if we flip back really quickly to our other project template, we know that we want to get the information. So for medical surgical, we want to know how many discharges there were. The age cohort is 15 to 19. So we're going to have to add this up. So we can do that right on the side here. I'll just do sum, and then I'll just sum up these rows. And then the next, we want 20 to 44 as well. So let's just do from 20 to 44. We can go through and do that down here, equals sum. And we're just going to sum up all of these. Okay, so now we know for, again, Oswego County residents, we've got from 15 to 19, there were 98 discharges and 647 for males aged 20 to 44. Right, so you're just going to continue to go through and add this information and tweak those and sum up the columns as needed to fill out this table. Again, this is focusing on discharges. And once you have the information from your population included over here, it's going to also pull that information to tell you what some of these rates are, right? These are going to be your discharge rates, and that's going to incorporate those populations that we saw on the previous tab. So any questions with how to go through and set up the pivot table to get that information? I know that was a lot. If pivot tables are new, it probably seems overwhelming. If they're not new, this probably seems pretty simple. Again, all I would suggest is try to get in there and set up the pivot tables as soon as possible. Start playing around with them, and once you get the hang of it, it actually goes by pretty quickly. So we're going to go here to calculation 4.2. So this one is looking at patient days. So what we want to do here is not just look at discharges for Oswego County residents, but we want to see how long did they stay as well. So if we hop back to our pivot table, what we can do here is as we look over to the field management section here, so we had changed our summation value down here to count of length of stay. So that again was just counting all of those rows. We can right-hand click on that little information button right on the right-hand side. And we can click that, change that to sum. And that's then going to take for all of those different rows, right, for Oswego County residents that are male, age 15, it's going to add up the length of stay for all of those patient visits, right? So now we had 98 discharges. Those 98 discharges or patient admissions spent a total of 365 days, right? So we're gonna, again, go back to our other file here. We would say for males 15 to 19, they stayed a total of 365 days, and 3,633 for the next. 3,633. Again, so working these pivot tables and filling out the information on these tabs, once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty mindless. You could probably watch TV or do something else and just go through and plug in this information. The critical analysis piece is going to come into play is once you have all of this information plugged in for your county, you know, in terms of population and county utilization, it's going to start to tell you a picture of how much, you know, how many services are they using. And what's really interesting on this county utilization tab is if we come down here, so I'm also going to ask you about payer, right? I think for, depending on the county you're evaluating, understanding your payer mix is going to be important. So you're going to change your pivot table up a little bit so that you can look at those service categories and look at that information by payer code. I think this is probably, 4.4 is probably one of the most important tables in this template. This is going to go through market share here, and then it's right down here, it's going to go through your migration index. And this is really key because we can see that we might be, you know, that the elderly population who typically utilize the services more than anybody else, at least inpatient services, those cohorts are going to be growing. But if your migration index is really high, if your migration index here is over 1, it means that more often than not, patients within the county are leaving the county to receive care elsewhere. And we see that in Oswego County. Whereas patients in Oswego County residents typically will go to Onondaga County to receive care. Whereas Onondaga County, they're going to have a really high migration index, probably over 1, because patients are coming in from other counties, right? They've got a level 1 trauma center. They've got a lot of different amenities and services and specialties. So patients are going to be coming in from a lot of different areas to receive care there. Whereas in Oswego County, we're going to have a really low migration index. So that migration index is key in getting that right, because that is, again, one of those cells that is going to carry through into a number of calculations on these other tabs in the project template. So let's go through and see if we can just get this information for MedSurg to calculate the migration index for Oswego County. All right, so the first thing we want to know is we want to be able to just look at medical surgical as a service line, and we want to know how many patients were served in the county. So let's just hop back, patients served in the county. So if we think about how we want to set up our pivot table. So let's see. So we know we want service category. We don't care about sex anymore. We're just going to be doing an overall. We don't care about age. So again, our service category right now is set up for 1 and 2. And up here at the top, we don't actually care about patient county. Again, this is telling us residents of Oswego. We want to know how many patients were served in the county. So we're going to click on all of those. And that's going to say that in our data set, we see for MedSurg 51,000 admissions, but we do want to know how many of those happened in Oswego. So we can pull in HOSPCO, which is our hospital county. And so we want to see, of all of those patients that are in our data set, how many actually received care in Oswego. So again, that's county number 35. And so this is telling us that 13,801 patients from anywhere were served in our county. So 13,801. And then patients from the county. So how many of those patients were from the county that were served in the county? So to do that, we're going to actually go back and check 35 here. So 12,907 were from Oswego County. And so our migration index in this case is going to be this divided by this. So 1.07. So it's pretty stagnant, actually. Patients served in the county and patients from the county. So you're going to go through and essentially do the same sort of analysis, and you're going to go through and do it for each service category. And actually, I want to make sure that I did this correctly, because I was anticipating that it was going to be quite a bit lower than that. But this is going to be telling you, again, your migration index. So for Onondaga County, we're going to expect to see that it's really high. For small rural counties, we're usually going to expect to see that it's really low. So let me just go back. And this, you're going to have to do this as well. So just sense checking and making sure that everything that, when you do these calculations, that you can wrap your head around it and that it makes sense given what you know about the county. So let's go back and look at this. So patients served in the county. So we're going to have, again, we've got MedSurg, which are 1 and 2. Patients served in the county, so we know we've got 35 checked there. And then, but we're going to say we can have patients from anywhere. And it says 13,801, which we've got. And then how many of those patients? Oh, I'm sorry. So patients from the county, so this is what I did incorrectly. So here we want to know patients from the county. We're going to say 35 because we want Oswego County residents, but here we do not want to, we don't want to look at who of Oswego County residents just received care in Oswego. We want to see if Oswego County residents received care anywhere. So we're going to select all of these, which is going to give us 51,047. There we go. That's better. That's what I was anticipating. So our migration index for Oswego is 0.27, which is really low. So for those of you, again, that are working on rural counties, you're probably going to see that. And that's the case. Just knowing what's happening here in Oswego, we have one small health system, and what we're seeing is that Rochester Regional Health System from Monroe County has expressed interest in working with them and trying to create an alignment. as well as upstate. So you're starting to see, from these bigger counties, these bigger health systems that are obviously trying to create these affiliations with these smaller rural health systems. So, they're trying to, in many ways, obviously expand their network, but also tap into the fact that these smaller health systems have a really big migration problem. There's a lot of leakage out of the county. So this is going to be really interesting for all of you to get a good handle on what's happening at a county level in terms of, are patients coming in to receive care in your county, or are they going elsewhere? There are a couple more calculations down here, which is really just looking at patient flow, which is right for all of these different service lines. How many patients are admitted by day of the week, and that's going to again take into account some of the information from above to get a handle on the percentages of that distribution. So I know for the three of you that are on the call, your questions, because I'm going to post this, and I guarantee if you have questions, somebody else has them. So do you all have any questions in terms of setting up the pivot tables to do this first step in the analysis? Anybody?
I don't have any questions myself, but I tend to work with pivot tables pretty frequently.
All right. Yeah, I think again, it's, a matter of if you've got some comfort with pivot tables, it should be pretty easy to go through. If not, just, give it a shot. And if you want, I am always open to having you can send me your pivot tables. It might require you to send it via Google link because the file is going to be bigger. But I'm happy to look at your pivot tables and see how you're pulling the data, or you could just send me your project template if you've got a question and you just want to make sure that you're going through as you get started with tables 4.1 and 4.2, and I'll go through and I'll do it as well, and I'll just double check and make sure you're on the right track. If that's gonna, I think for most people too, to make sure that you don't keep going down and doing a lot of work incorrectly, I'm happy to do that up front if you want to send me that for just a quick review. So again, the way this works, so this is some of the information just to go through market share. You're going to go through your population changes, so what's happening in that 5 years between 2016 and 2021. Here we're going to look at county utilization, so what's happening in terms of residents of your county, where are they receiving care, how much of it are they using. We're going to go through some age adjustment calculations just like we did earlier in the semester. Then you're going to dig into facilities. So for the hospital that you choose, you're going to go through and start looking at the information by payer code. And on here in the project template, I include some of these code definitions, again, med surg, pediatrics, and how those are, what that key looks like, and what some of those reimbursement codes are. We're going to look at occupancy by service for your hospital. And then again, go through and look at, in this case, Oswego County residents' use of Oswego Hospital, and start to do some of those calculations. And this is going to compare your hospital's market share. And this is going to go back to referencing some of the cells that we have in that county utilization tab. Then we're going to go through and do use rate. So I'm actually going to I have to update the analysis for 2016. I'm going to do that for this. I can't anticipate that anybody's probably going to get to this point in the next couple weeks, but when I have it, I'll send it to you. So for New York State, we're going to look at the total discharges by service category. So this section is med surg, by age cohort and sex, discharges as well as patient days. And then this is going to basically compare your county's discharge rate and patient day rate from tables 4.1 and 4.2 that we just walked through. And the way the certificate of need process works is you can show that that it looks like, utilization is really high for your hospital. You might need additional beds. But what the state will do is they'll compare your discharge rate and patient day rate to the state's rate as though it's kind of the baseline. And if your discharge rate or patient day rates are much higher than the average, then they're basically going to look at your operations and say there's probably some things operationally that you could be doing to improve patient flow instead of just adding additional beds. Right? So this is part of it where when they actually go through and when you do the calculation, you want to take the lowest rates, the discharge rate and patient day rate, whether it's from your county or for New York State when you're calculating your projections. So once you take whatever's lowest, your discharge rate or the state's, that information is going to go over into this tab, which is your discharge forecast. So this is going to be looking at some of those standard discharge rates, estimated county resident discharges. This is going to take into account the population projection in 2021 plus those utilization rates. And then basically we're going to be looking at, if we look at the change in population, if we look at the utilization of services for your hospital, what can we anticipate will happen, right? What is the percent increase really high? Is there going to be a reduction? And all of these values then will be fed over into our very last table, which is our bed need forecast. And basically it's going to take those patient day rates, the population of the county, and it's going to give you an expected number of patient days. This all rolls up into these final calculations, which gives you your overall need for med-surg beds at the county level. We're going to adjust it for an 85% occupancy. We don't want to assume that you're going to use all the beds all the time. Obviously, there's going to be turnover. You've got to have EBS come in and clean the beds. So typically, we try to target 85% occupancy, so we'll adjust our calculations for that. We'll bring in I already calculated migration, so it's pulling in the migration calculation from 4.4 that we just went through, which is 0.27%. It's going to adjust the county bed need based on that information, and it's going to spit out, how many beds do you need, and then you compare that to whatever the current number of licensed beds is at your facility, and that's it. That's telling you whether or not you need to add or reduce beds. And once you go through all of these tables and do all of this analysis, then your job is to basically just do a critical review and say, okay, does this make sense based on what I know about what's happening at the hospital, what's happening at the county level? And based on that information, trying to make a pitch, right? So you've got to pull in some data visualization, put together a PowerPoint just as though you were presenting it to your board of directors prior to submitting for a certificate of need to say, for all of these different reasons, we really need to be, increasing our med-surg beds by, 30, 35 beds, whatever it turns out to be. Or you might find out that you actually don't need to increase inpatient beds, which in that case, right, how should strategically the organization be thinking about whether it's, do you close an inpatient unit? Can you shift those resources elsewhere? So again, that's trying to tap into what you know about the facility that you're working with. All of this work should line up to whatever those strategic plans are at your organization. All right, that is, again, that we've just gone through a lot in the past 40 minutes. So I know probably many of you are going to be like rewinding to the point where I'm setting up the pivot table and showing you how to do it. So I'll end there in terms of my spiel and what to expect in, with getting through this project template. But again, I'll open it up for those of you on the call. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, I so appreciate some of you hopping on. And again, for those of you that couldn't, this will be up on Blackboard. But as always, keep me posted and shoot me an email if you have any questions.
Thank you.